Echo 17 military base lay deep within the Alaskan wilderness, where only the biting cold winds and endless stretches of towering pines dominated the landscape. This was one of the military's most secretive outposts, established to monitor the border and detect potential threats before they could arise. With harsh weather conditions year-round, this place was not just a test of endurance for humans, but a battleground where man and nature were in constant opposition. Commander Nathan Cole, a seasoned veteran with 18 years of service, was not one to be easily surprised or shaken by intense situations. Standing beside him was Sergeant Daniel Reeves, a survival expert who knew Alaska's ecosystem better than anyone. Reeves had witnessed countless encounters between humans and wild animals, but he never imagined a day would come when an animal would seek out humans for help. This winter was harsher than any before. Temperatures had plunged to a brutal 45 DGF, blizzards swept through the region relentlessly, and all signs of life seemed frozen under the merciless Arctic cold. The once lively forests had become eerily silent, as if nature itself was struggling against the unforgiving winter. Then, on what should have been an ordinary morning, while the patrol unit was inspecting the perimeter fence, an astonishing sight threw the entire base into high alert. A massive brown bear was approaching the front gate. But this was no ordinary bear encounter. There was no aggression, no territorial display, only a haunting look in its eyes, something that resembled pleading rather than hostility. Its thick fur was coated in ice crystals, shimmering under the weak morning sun. But what truly sent chills down the soldiers' spines were the two tiny bear cubs clinging to their mother's legs, their fragile bodies trembling violently from exhaustion and cold. The mother bear did not growl, she did not charge, she simply stood there, staring at the armed soldiers, her eyes filled with despair. In all the years this base had stood, no wild bear had ever willingly approached humans like this. Nathan Cole stepped forward cautiously, studying the massive creature before him. There was no hostility in its gaze, only a desperate plea. The air was thick with tension. No one dared to breathe too loudly. A single unspoken question echoed in the minds of every soldier present. What could have driven such a mighty creature to abandon all instincts, to defy every natural law and seek help from humans? And then what happened next would change everything they thought they knew about the wild. The icy wind howled through the steel perimeter fence, whipping up loose snow and scattering it into the air. Inside Echo 17, no one dared to move. The soldiers stood in formation, weapons ready, but no one pulled the trigger. None of them had ever seen anything like this before. The massive brown bear remained still, neither aggressive nor threatening. It did not roar or charge, it simply waited. At its feet, two tiny cubs shivered violently, their fur coated in frost, their wide eyes filled with fear. One of them was barely clinging to life, lying limp in the snow, its weak breaths flickering like a dying flame. Nathan Cole was the first to lower his rifle. His instincts as a soldier told him this was not a confrontation, it was a plea for help. He glanced at Sergeant Daniel Reeves, who was watching the bear with intense focus. Reeves whispered, "She's waiting for us to help." Nathan swallowed hard. A mother bear had willingly approached a heavily armed military base, breaching tight security in the deadliest winter on record? That should have been impossible. And yet, here she was. Reeves immediately signaled for the security team to review the base's surveillance footage. When they played back the recordings from the night before, something bizarre emerged. Since 3 a.m., the bear had been lurking at the edge of the base. Hidden among the snow-laden trees, she had been watching. Not scavenging, not attacking, just observing. She had moved along the perimeter fence, studying the guard posts as if searching for an entry point. Even more unsettling, an inspection of the snow-covered ground revealed something chilling. The mother bear had traveled a staggering distance to get here. Her tracks stretched for miles, through some of the harshest terrain imaginable, against deadly sub-zero temperatures. But why? Then the mother bear did something that sent chills through the soldiers. She bent down, gently picked up her weakest cub in her jaws, and turned toward the soldiers. With deliberate movements, she lifted her cub higher, presenting it to them, as if showing them proof, a silent plea for mercy. Nathan and Reeves exchanged glances. "She's begging us to save her cub," Reeves murmured, his voice filled with disbelief. None of them had ever witnessed anything like this. The mother bear never broke eye contact. Her gaze was filled with hope, fear, and pain, emotions only a parent could truly understand. Nathan took a cautious step forward, assessing the situation. The cubs had clearly suffered from severe cold exposure. The smaller one was barely breathing. The larger one, though still conscious, was trembling uncontrollably, its eyes dull with exhaustion. If they didn't act immediately, neither cub would survive the night. Nathan turned to Reeves. "We have to do something." But there was a massive problem. How could they approach and help without triggering the mother bear's natural instinct to attack? A wild mother bear, no matter how desperate, was still an 800-pound predator. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and it could kill a man in seconds. Reeves swallowed hard. He had studied wildlife his entire life, but this, a bear actively seeking human assistance, was something no textbook had ever prepared him for. He took a deep breath, then slowly removed his rifle and unstrapped his gear. The entire unit tensed. "Reeves, what the hell are you doing?" Nathan's voice was sharp. "I'm going to try getting closer," Reeves replied. "If we don't do something, those cubs are going to die." The wind howled, sweeping up flurries of snow. The mother bear remained still, watching Reeves intently. The entire base held its breath. If Reeves made one wrong move, it would all end here. But if they did nothing, none of them, neither the bear nor her cubs, would survive the night. A bitter wind swept through the camp, carrying flecks of snow that danced under the dim yellow glow of the Echo 17 base lights. The tension in the air was suffocating as Reeves took slow, careful steps toward the mother bear. The entire unit held its breath, fingers gripping their weapons, ready to react if the situation spiraled out of control. But the bear did not attack. She stood still, her sharp eyes filled not with aggression, but with desperation. Reeves knelt in the snow, lowering himself below the bear's eye level, a sign that he was not a threat. Slowly he reached into his backpack and pulled out a thermal blanket, a critical survival tool for preserving body heat in extreme conditions. "Damn it, I can't believe I'm actually doing this," he muttered under his breath, the cold making his voice brittle. The mother bear didn't move, only shifting slightly as Reeves extended his arm, the metallic sheen of the thermal blanket catching the faint light. And then she did something that left every soldier stunned. She gently placed her weakest cub onto the snow, nudging it toward Reeves. A mother bear, a wild predator, willingly handing over her cub to a human? It defied every natural instinct, every rule of the wild. From behind, Nathan Cole tightened his grip on his backpack straps. In his years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. This was not just an animal. She understood. She trusted them. Without wasting a second, Reeves wrapped the thermal blanket around the smaller cub. He could feel the frail rise and fall of its weak breaths, its tiny body ice cold. "We need to get it inside, now," Reeves shouted. Nathan nodded, signaling for 2 medics to bring a makeshift stretcher. But as soon as they moved, the mother bear let out a low, warning growl, stepping forward protectively. "No. No. Easy." Reeves raised a hand, trying to keep her calm. The bear hesitated but didn't retreat. Her maternal instincts screamed at her not to let her cub out of her sight. Nathan quickly thought of a solution. He stepped back slowly, carefully placing the stretcher on the ground, right at the mother bear's feet. Then, together with Reeves, they gently lifted the cub onto it, moving with deliberate slowness, making sure she saw every step of the process. At 40 degrees, they were racing against death itself. Every second mattered. The mother bear followed closely as Reeves and Nathan carried the cub into a makeshift medical tent inside the base. But as soon as her baby disappeared behind the tent flap, she let out a deep, anxious roar, the sound of a mother in distress. And still, Nathan couldn't move. "We need to keep her calm," Nathan said urgently. Reeves nodded, pulling a cloth from his pocket. He dipped it into warm water and gently placed it on the ground in front of the bear. She sniffed, then stilled. They had earned a little more trust. Inside, Reeves and a military medic worked quickly. The cub's body temperature had plummeted to a life-threatening level, and its breathing was dangerously weak. "We need to raise its temperature immediately." They wrapped it in layers of thermal blankets, applied heating packs, and even used body heat, Reeves stripping off his outer coat to hold the cub close to his chest. Every second felt like an eternity. Outside, the mother bear growled softly, calling out to her baby. Then, suddenly, a small twitch. The cub shivered slightly. Then again. "It's responding," Reeves shouted, the tension momentarily lifting from his face. The cub's breathing became steadier, its tiny heartbeat grew stronger. Slowly, its eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. Nathan exhaled sharply. They had saved it. But there was still one more cub out there. The second rescue begins. Reeves stepped outside, locking eyes with the mother bear. I know, he murmured. She took a step back, turning toward her second cub, the bigger one, but still severely weakened. Nathan didn't hesitate. He signaled for his team to prepare a second stretcher. But now the snowstorm was intensifying. The wind howled violently, reducing visibility to just a few feet. They were running out of time. If they delayed, the second cub wouldn't survive the night. Reeves turned to Nathan, his eyes flashing with determination. "We move now, storm or no storm." Nathan tightened the straps on his pack, glancing at the mother bear, who stood beside her remaining cub. Her eyes still held that desperate plea. There was no turning back. The next rescue had to begin right now. The snowstorm howled violently, the wind slashing against Reeves and Nathan, making it nearly impossible to keep their eyes fully open. Snow swirled around them, reducing visibility to less than 5 meters. But they had no other choice. The second bear cub was on the verge of death. The mother bear stood protectively beside her cub, her fur covered in snow, her eyes locked onto her shivering child lying helplessly on the frozen ground. Then, in a moment that defied all instincts, she nudged the cub toward Reeves and Nathan, a clear signal that she was entrusting them to help. "I can't believe this. She actually understands we're trying to save them," Nathan whispered, before quickly signaling his team into action. Without hesitation, Reeves and 2 soldiers carefully moved toward the second cub. But just as they reached down to check its condition, a sudden gust of wind swept away a thick layer of snow, revealing a terrifying reality. Beneath the cub was a large crack in the ice, a weak spot that could collapse at any moment. Nathan barely had time to react before, crack! The ice beneath them began to shift. "Damn it, fall back now!" Reeves shouted. The team scrambled backward, but the cub was still in danger. The mother bear let out a low, distressed growl, her eyes filled with panic. She didn't dare move forward. She knew that one wrong step could send her baby plunging into the icy abyss. "We have to pull it out now!" Nathan shouted over the roaring storm. Reeves immediately ordered the deployment of a rescue rope. A soldier tossed the rope across the short gap, but the cub was too weak to move on its own. There was no other option. Someone had to go in and get it. "I'm going in," Nathan declared before anyone could stop him. Reeves grabbed his arm, his face grim. "You go in there and you might not make it back. You know that, right?" Nathan took a deep breath, determination burning in his eyes. "If I don't, That cub is dead. Without wasting another second, he secured a safety harness around his waist, signaled his team to hold the rope steady, and slowly stepped onto the unstable ice. Each step sent ominous creaks through the frozen ground. He could feel the ice beneath him shifting, as if it was ready to give way at any moment. The mother bear watched him intensely, her massive paws shifting anxiously, but she held back, trusting him. Finally, Nathan reached the cub. He crouched down and wrapped his arms around its small, trembling body. Its heartbeat was weak. "Hang in there, little one. I'm getting you out of here," he whispered. But just as he prepared to retreat, the ice gave way beneath him. Nathan and the cub began to fall, but at the last second, Reeves lunged forward, gripping the safety rope and pulling with all his strength. Nathan was yanked backward just as the ice shattered completely beneath him. For a terrifying moment, he dangled in the air, the cub still clutched tightly in his arms. The team hauled them up inch by inch, fighting against the storm and the biting cold. Just as Nathan was pulled to safety, the weakened ice fully collapsed, leaving behind a gaping chasm of freezing darkness. Reeves exhaled sharply. That was too damn close. But they had no time to rest. The second cub was still critically weak. The mother bear rushed forward the moment she saw her cub was safe, but she didn't growl or snatch it away. Instead, she stood there, watching, waiting. Reeves quickly wrapped the second cub in another thermal blanket, while Nathan, still shaking, unfastened the safety harness. "It's too weak. We need to get inside, now," Reeves shouted. No one argued. The team moved fast, this time with the mother bear following closely behind them. No hesitation, no resistance. Inside the makeshift medical tent, Reeves gently placed the second cub next to its sibling. The military medic rushed in. Its vitals were dropping fast. "We're losing it. We need to raise its temperature, now." They repeated the same emergency treatment as before, but this time the tension was even higher. The mother bear let out soft, desperate cries, lowering her massive head as if pleading for them to save her child. Everyone focused, every move precise. Time stretched. Then, a tiny whimper. The cub twitched slightly. Everyone held their breath. Then, it opened its eyes. A wave of relief crashed over the entire team. Both cubs were alive. The mother bear, as if understanding what had just happened, leaned forward, gently touching her nose to her cubs before turning to look at Reeves and Nathan. Her eyes filled with a gratitude that needed no words. But this wasn't over yet. The storm was still raging, and they had one final challenge ahead: ensuring the safety of the bear family before it was too late. The fight for survival wasn't over yet. The bear cub had survived. The entire team sighed in relief as they saw it slowly regain consciousness, but there was no time to celebrate. The snowstorm was intensifying, the wind howling violently, and the temperature was plummeting to dangerous levels. Even for highly trained soldiers, staying exposed for too long in these conditions could be a death sentence. But the bigger problem was still unsolved. They couldn't keep the mother bear and her cubs in the base forever. They needed to return to the wild, to a place with enough food, water, and a safe environment to survive. However, moving through a blizzard with 2 weakened cubs was an almost impossible task. "We can't wait for the storm to pass. If we stay here too long, the mother bear might panic, which could put both her and us in danger," Reeves said, his voice filled with concern. Nathan checked the temperature. -35 dF and still dropping. The cubs had recovered slightly, but they were still too weak. They needed a solid plan, and they needed to act fast. A quick debate broke out between Reeves, Nathan, and the command team. "If we release them now, they won't make it. But if we keep them too long, the mother bear might lose patience and turn aggressive," Nathan reasoned. "Is there any way we can protect them while moving?" one soldier asked. "Maybe we can use the snowmobiles to shorten the journey. But there's one problem. If the mother bear doesn't understand what we're doing, she might attack us," Reeves pointed out, glancing at the mother bear who was still watching them closely. Then something unbelievable happened. The mother bear stepped forward, gently touched her nose to Reeves' hand, then looked towards her cubs. Nathan's eyes widened. No way. She understands. The bear's gaze never left them, as if she was waiting for their decision. It was clear she was entrusting them with her family's fate. Reeves signaled the team to prepare the snowmobiles. The cubs were wrapped tightly in thermal blankets, carefully secured on the sled, while the mother bear followed closely, her eyes never leaving her young. As soon as they left the base, the storm intensified. The wind slashed like a knife, the snow blinding their vision. Even with GPS guiding their path, maneuvering the snowmobiles in this blizzard was a monumental challenge. "Full speed! We need to get out of here before nightfall!" Reeves shouted through the radio. The mother bear kept up, undeterred by the storm. She didn't whimper, hesitate, or fall behind. She knew this was her only chance to save her cubs. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed beneath them. "Stop! Ice breaking!" Nathan screamed. The snowmobile screeched to a halt, just inches away from a massive crevasse that stretched over 6 feet wide. The storm had completely hidden the dangerous terrain, and they had nearly driven straight into a deadly trap. "We need a different route," Reeves shouted. But the problem was, there was no other way. This was the shortest path to the forest, where the mother bear and her cubs could survive. The team looked at each other, then at the mother bear. She was still standing there, waiting, trusting them. "Do you see anything?" Reeves asked Nathan, eyes locked on the deep crevasse in front of them. Nathan pulled out a depth gauge rope and dropped it 16 feet down. They couldn't jump across. Option is to reinforce the surface and create a crossing, Reeves decided, signaling the team to unload the temporary bridge kit. Wooden planks, ropes, and steel nets were quickly assembled into a makeshift bridge, but no one knew if it could hold the weight of the team and the mother bear. "We don't have a choice. Either we go across or we're trapped here." Nathan took a deep breath, then placed his first step on the bridge. The structure creaked, but it held. "Go quickly!" Reeves yelled. One by one, the team carefully crossed the unstable bridge, but the biggest challenge remained, getting the mother bear to cross. She stood frozen, staring down at the crevasse, then back at her cubs. Fear was evident in her eyes. Reeves knew that if they didn't do something, she wouldn't move. Taking a bold risk, he stepped back onto the bridge, extending his hand, gently motioning for the bear to come. "Come on, Mama Bear, you can do this." Everyone held their breath, but the bear didn't move. Then, a small whimper from one of the cubs broke the tension. And in that moment, the mother bear made her choice. One slow, cautious step at a time, she moved forward. She paused, sniffing the bridge, then took another step, then another. Then, her front paws reached solid ground. The entire team nearly collapsed in relief. She did it. They had crossed the chasm, and now they could continue their journey toward the forest. Toward home. The storm still raged around them, but for the first time, hope had never been clearer. The journey wasn't over yet, but one thing was certain. They would do everything to ensure this family made it home. The blizzard continued to howl, but in the hearts of the soldiers a flicker of hope was beginning to grow. They had crossed the deadly crevasse, led the mother bear and her cubs far from danger. But the journey wasn't over yet. They still had to navigate through the treacherous terrain and return the bear family to safety before the storm worsened. Nathan adjusted his jacket, the biting cold cutting into his skin, but it couldn't dampen the rising excitement in his chest. They had come so far, and now there was only one final stretch left. The team held formation, carefully treading through the deep snow, each step feeling heavier with the weight of exhaustion. The mother bear walked closely behind the sled, her watchful eyes never leaving her cubs, who remained wrapped in thermal blankets. Then Nathan saw it, a familiar landmark, A cluster of tall, snow-covered trees stood ahead, their branches weighed down by ice. "That's it!" he shouted into his radio, his voice filled with relief and excitement. Reeves saw it too. They had reached the forest's edge, the place where the mother bear could safely rebuild her home. But before they could celebrate, one final challenge emerged. As soon as they entered the forest, a sudden gust of wind roared through the trees, snapping thick branches and sending a cascade of snow crashing down like an avalanche. "Get down!" Reeves yelled. The entire team dropped to the ground, shielding themselves from the falling debris. The mother bear reacted instinctively, positioning herself over her cubs, using her massive body as a shield to protect them from the freezing onslaught. No one dared to move. This was the defining moment. If the mother bear panicked and ran off, everything they had fought for would be in vain. But what happened next left them stunned. The mother bear, though visibly nervous, didn't flee. She stood firm, scanning her surroundings before turning back toward Nathan and Reeves, as if waiting for a final signal. She was trusting them. Nathan slowly rose to his feet, took a careful step forward, and looked at her with quiet reassurance. "You did it, Mama Bear. It's time to take them home." His voice was calm, though he had no idea if she could understand him. The bear held his gaze for a moment, then lowered her head, nudging her cubs upright with her nose, as if she knew it was finally time. And then she began to walk, slowly but with unwavering determination, leading her cubs deeper into the forest. The entire team watched in silence. They knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Not just a wild bear seeking human help, but a mother choosing to trust them until the very end. The mother bear had only gone a few steps before she suddenly stopped. She turned her head one last time, looking straight at them. And then, in a moment that sent shivers down their spines, she lifted one front paw and held it there, as if saying, "Thank you." No one spoke. No one could. A simple gesture, yet it carried a profound meaning. Then, like a phantom in the storm, the mother bear vanished into the snowfall, leading her cubs into the safety of the forest. As the last glimpse of the bear disappeared, Reeves let out a deep breath, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Never thought we'd be doing this," one soldier muttered, still staring at the fading tracks in the snow. Nathan nodded, his gaze locked on the forest. "We didn't just save a bear family, we proved that sometimes the bond between humans and nature runs deeper than words." Reeves let out a quiet chuckle. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a lesson. A lesson in trust, compassion, and change. In the midst of the harshest winter storm, humans and animals had written a story together, one that no one would have ever believed possible. When the team returned to the base, they weren't the same people who had left that morning. Something had changed inside them. They had gained a new understanding about nature, responsibility, and the creatures they once thought were merely wild and dangerous. This journey had taught them that sometimes the most important decisions aren't made with logic alone, but with compassion. A week later, an official report about the event was sent to higher command. And soon after, a new initiative was established, a military-backed wildlife conservation program, ensuring that no bear family would ever be left stranded like this again. And so, the story of the mother bear and her cubs didn't just become a cherished memory among the soldiers, it became the catalyst for real change. A change that no one saw coming, but one that no one would ever forget. The blizzard had finally passed, leaving behind a landscape of white silence, where deep footprints remained imprinted in the snow, the tracks of men and a bear family who had defied the odds together. Back at the base, Nathan and the rescue team sat around the briefing table, exchanging silent glances. Each of them bore different expressions, exhaustion, relief, but above all, a transformation they couldn't quite put into words. "Never thought I'd see the day when we'd risk our lives for a bear," Reeves finally spoke, breaking the silence. Nathan let out a small chuckle, his gaze still fixed on the distant forest where the mother bear had vanished with her cubs. "Not just a bear," he said, "a family, and we didn't risk our lives, we did the right thing." This wasn't just an extraordinary event. It had changed the way these elite soldiers viewed the relationship between humans and nature. The rescue report was quickly sent up the chain of command, and it wasn't long before a high-level meeting was called at military headquarters. Surveillance footage captured by the team's body cams, along with first-hand testimonies from the soldiers, created an unprecedented case file, one that showcased the intelligence and trust of a wild animal like never before. This event not only forced military experts to reconsider how they responded to wildlife encounters, but also sparked policy changes in the region's conservation efforts. A collaborative initiative was soon established between the military and wildlife conservation organizations. New protocols were put in place to monitor hazardous areas, install warning systems, and conduct rescue operations when necessary. From that moment on, protecting the creatures of the wilderness was no longer just the responsibility of environmental groups. It became part of the duty of soldiers like Nathan and Reeves. As the days passed and life at the base returned to normal, one thing remained unchanged. The story of the mother bear and her cubs lived on, becoming a legend among the troops. Whenever soldiers spotted bear tracks in the snow, they no longer saw them as a threat, but as the mark of a creature who had once placed its trust in humans. Nathan, Reeves, and their team hadn't just completed a rescue mission. They had changed. From soldiers who simply followed orders, they had learned the true meaning of compassion and the deep, unspoken connection between humans and nature. Sometimes, bravery isn't about wielding a weapon to defend territory, but about having the heart to reach out and help those who are weaker. And in that unforgettable moment, when the mother bear lifted her paw in what seemed like a gesture of gratitude, they knew this was the greatest lesson they had ever learned.